that's not a tax incentive thing.
No.
That is at a far, far deeper level.
Right.
And it is to do with a commandment. It is to do with a commandment. And, you know, I would just add one other thing to that, which is I was talking the other day with a friend, a biblical scholar, and he said, you know that that famous quote on the walls of the UN, the quote from Isaiah, and he shall judge among the nations, and he shall rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. Now that's a magnificent sentiment, of course, and who wouldn't want to follow it? But the thing that I just realized is, look at what comes before it. Let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem.
Right. That's called a precondition, Douglas.
You don't get the idea of war being no more, or peace breaking out among nations, unless the word goes out from Jerusalem.
Yeah.
You can have one, but you can't have it without the other.
That's right. Yeah. All right, sir. For those of you who are going to follow us over to the Daily Wire side, I'm going to talk to Douglas with equal seriousness about the interplay between religious fundamentalism and psychopathy, with particular attention to the Islamic world. Why? Because there are signs of hope for a rapprochement between Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, mostly in the form of the Abraham Accords, perhaps in the actions of the United Arab Emirates, and perhaps the Saudis. Now, there are many things to untangle before that becomes a reality, and I would like to discuss some of those thorny issues with Douglas. If you want to join us on the Daily Wire side, that's where we're headed next. Thank you, Mr. Murray.
Thank you.
Yes, that was a hell of a read, and it's quite a remarkable thing to have managed, and I'm amazed you're still in one piece, both physically and psychologically. So,
thank you.
Yeah, you bet, you bet. And thank you to all of you for your time and attention, and to the Daily Wire for making this possible, the film crew here in Scottsdale for making arrangements to have this happen today. Bye-bye.
Ah, yes, nothing quite like a little light theology and geopolitical prognostication to round out your day, right? I mean, forget Netflix. Tonight we're cracking open Isaiah and talking Middle East peace accords like it's poker night at the Vatican. And did you catch the bait and switch? We start with commandments and end up halfway through a spiritual TED Talk on military de-escalation. Classic maneuver. But hey, if world peace really does hinge on Jerusalem's Wi-Fi signal to the divine, let's at least hope the router holds up. Stay tuned, folks. The Book of Revelation might just get a sequel.
The refusal of the West to admit to the existence of malevolence, our inability to understand the difference between a just and an unjust war, our willingness to hide in the shibboleth that war is bad, which is hardly a moral claim at all.
No, I mean, I would say that people, there's a saying, I quote somebody saying the book is sort of idiot British student survey, in which a large number of people said they wouldn't be willing to fight for their country, even if it was under existential threat. And
Now they've been taught that.
Well, yes, and when you dig down on the reasons why they said they wouldn't even be willing to fight for their country under existential threat, as the young men and women of Israel have had to do for the last 18 months, the most common reply among young British people of the same age was, war doesn't solve anything.
Right. War, yeah. Well, and you think about how easy it is to make the moral claim, for example. I've heard many people make this claim. I'm against the death of women and children. As if that's some sort of moral claim.
Well,
as if that's not the basis of common humanity. No one can capitalize on that
Yes.
On that profession of their morality.
Well, and the other one I come across is people, by the way, and they don't really mean it, by the way, because again and again, the people who say that Israel is killing women and children are apologists for at best and supporters for at worst, a group that videoed themselves killing women and children. And many of the people who say that the Israelis, many of the people who say that the Israelis are doing this are the same people who say that Hamas did not. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's another level of the psychopathy now in the West. Mm-hmm. It's like, I've said repeatedly since the 7th, what did we have in the 2017 period? Believe all women. Mm-hmm. Turned out, don't believe women if they're Jews. Mm-hmm. Don't believe it then. Don't believe it if the rape is caught on camera by Hamas and they're boasting of it. Don't believe them. But then, a year down the road in the war in Gaza, these same people who deny that Hamas raped women on the 7th will say that Israeli soldiers are raping women in Gaza. Every single time it's some form of projection,
well, and that's that last-ditch attempt to what would you say, to salvage the oppressor-victim narrative. That's the core. That's the staff in the center of the belief system.
But yes, I mean, to go back to the main point, yes, the main response that I hear is people who say things like, I don't like war.
Yeah. Now, your book ends, and we should wrap with this because we're coming near the end. Like, your book ends, I guess, on a quasi-theological note, right? It seems to me that the underlying conclusion that you drew, having admitted to the existence of evil, let's say, in a theological sense, at least technically, right? Because it's a language that expresses that landscape. It's at least that. Yes. And it is a pointer to the opposite, right? That's the thing. To say it again about contending with evil is once you admit to its existence, especially in its lowest forms, you're forced to grapple with the fact that the opposite exists. And then that points you towards heaven, so to speak. Now, you structured your book so that your conclusion, which is actually somewhat optimistic, is that despite being faced down by a death cult that outnumbers them geometrically.
The modern West, where we've turned moral clarity into a vibe check. We've apparently outsourced the concept of evil to a Reddit thread, and our idea of virtue is saying war is bad like it's a TED Talk on kindness. Meanwhile, actual atrocities get the same scrutiny as a Netflix plot twist. Well, it's complicated. No, it isn't. You can't claim moral high ground while refusing to name the hill you're standing on. And let's be honest, when a society thinks fighting for survival is too controversial, it's not peace we're cultivating. It's cowardice wrapped in a slogan.
It seems to me, because the ground that you and I and others have identified for many years of deracination of populations, demoralization of populations, stripping away of all legitimate heroes or ignorance of them, whether it's Wilberforce or Churchill or anyone else, that the stripping away of the heroes, stripping away of the national story in country after country across the West leaves this vacuum.
Canada leading the pack, perhaps.
Canada, perhaps the world leader.
Australia, New Zealand, they could compete.
They're doing very, very well.
They are.
But into this vacuum, something was always going to step. And there is no reason why American or other Western universities or streets, because it's not just at higher education institutions, it's, Union Station in New York shut down again the other week by hundreds of people chanting for intifada.
Yeah.
Intifada terrorism in the center of New York. What it is there's no reason why this death cult ideology should find itself worshipped in the free West, apart from the fact that we have allowed ourselves to be deracinated and demoralized and allowed the weakest and most pernicious imaginable ideology to step into the vacuum.
Yes, an assortment of weak and appalling ideologies, most particularly the idea that the world can be explained in consequence of the oppressor-victim narrative.
Indeed, the West, where we bulldozed our historical foundations, threw our heroes into the recycling bin, and then acted shocked when the intellectual squatters moved in. Who could have guessed that after decades of erasing Churchill and canonizing grievance, something nasty might fill the void? Canada's leading the charge, of course, turning national amnesia into an Olympic sport. And as for the oppressor-victim narrative, it's the new state religion, only it requires no salvation, just constant outrage and zero memory. Honestly, if this were a movie, we'd be the clueless empire in the prequel to Idiocracy.